Hey guys, welcome one more time to another episode of Authentic Leadership 101. And we're going to be just talking about authentic actions tonight. If you've been following us, we've been covering five pillars: vulnerability, conversation, psychological, personal, and living your values. And what we're going to do tonight, we're going to cover the actions to that and what they look like, what authentic action looks like for each one of those pillars. And for all of those who are joining us live, we ask you to drop in the comments where you're tuning in from. Let us know anything that you have, any comments that you have, any questions that you have, so we can definitely go over them. And we appreciate each and every one of you guys. But of course, I do not do this by myself. I got my gracious, lovely, wonderful host, the Mrs. Tracy Robinson, who is in here with her celebration. Well, her down celebration now it's over now, but her Thanksgiving celebration from the wonderful province of Canada. So
Yes, and
that
as
was really
part of my celebration, I'm thankful for all of you guys who continue to watch us live and participate in the conversation, because that's what makes it fun, and it's what makes it most interesting, most intriguing, and the most helpful for you guys, is to be able to show up and ask your questions, share your thoughts, so that we can help everybody see what authentic leadership looks like for them. And I think that's one of the fun things that we're going to be talking about in this episode is we have our five pillars. If you guys haven't been through the five pillars, our first two episodes, not the teaser episode, but the first two actual episodes are attached to those pillars. And so go back and listen to those. We will cover them today on a high level. What we're going to specifically look at today, though, are some of the actions that are tied to those pillars. And the other thing I want you guys to take into consideration is that actions are based on who you are. And an authentic action is based on you doing something that feels right for you. So we want to encourage you guys to think about that as we go through the conversation today, because there probably will be things that feel authentic for me or feel authentic for Carl Sean that won't feel authentic for you. And that's normal, because that's what being authentic looks like. And that's what this conversation is about, is being able to have to talk about those things and try on different things. And if they don't fit you, don't do them. So just keep that in mind as we go through.
Yes, and we definitely want to talk about them, and we want to continue the conversation. Want you guys to add value to the conversation as you always do with your comments. Let us know how these authentic actions really look to you. Is there something that you think that can be applicable? Well, I can't talk now. Applicable to what you're doing, to where you are in your leadership. Even if you are in leadership, everyone can be a leader, though there may not be a title. And I think that's really our premise of this. Being an authentic leader is just you leading in what you are doing, whether you be an entrepreneur, solopreneur, business owner, whether you be working in corporate. Maybe you're looking for a new place to hang your hat and call employment. All of these things are going to be vital for you to take with you. So let's engage, let's ask questions, let's talk about it, and let's get down to some of those, like my grandma used to say, the brass tacks. I never knew what that meant, but I think it's the nitty gritty, so to speak. So let's get down to the nitty gritty and see how these actions can be applied, how they will make us better, how will they develop us, how will they help us to engage, how will they help us to be authentic in our values, our morals, in those sense that we actually want to be fulfilling in the workplace, in the home, even, because some people have a hard time of being really their authentic selves in the home. So what we're talking about and what we're giving you is going to be helpful to that. And you can apply it to what it looks like for you. So this is the benefit of it. Because as Tracy said, it doesn't all look the same. That's why I'm an avid fan of talking about the dictionary like I do, because authentic does not mean that same thing for you as it means for me. So the dictionary tells you one thing, and I think it means another. So here we go. But I won't. I won't start on that horse tonight, Tracy. I won't start on that. So where do we begin on this evening, my friend?
So first of all, we have quite a few people who continue to join us, and I would recommend that you guys connect with each other, because we're all in this conversation of authentic leadership together.
Yes.
And the reason why I also want to call that out is one of the things we're going to be talking about today is values. And if anybody needs to learn more about values, you need to connect with our friend Lindsay Harlkadats who is in our
Yes.
comments right now. She
Yes.
has some voracious values workshops, which I probably will reference at some point as well once we get into that
Absolutely.
part of the conversation. And knowing your values is where you get to figure out what alignment looks like for you, as in what is authentic, what isn't authentic. And before we even hop into the conversation, one of the things I also want to add is that there's no right or wrong actions that we're talking about here today in
Right.
terms of authenticity. So just because something I do feels authentic to me doesn't mean it's the right thing to do, and that what you do is the wrong thing to do. So I want you guys, you gotta open your minds today, you guys. We're looking at all the things that fit you. And just like Carl Sean and I are wearing different shirts, although that'd be weird if we were wearing the same shirt because we're so far apart. Like
I-
literally the same
yeah,
shirt.
I want to go with our orange. My
I
orange theme
know.
there.
I appreciate that. You did not give me a memo though. It wouldn't matter because I don't
I
actually
did.
have anything orange.
Right. That was not my authentic moment right then. I did not share. I did not share.
It's all good, but this is about what's right for you, and it's just like a piece of clothing. And also, if you need help with clothing, connect with Melanie Potro. I'll just give shout outs to everybody who I know who's here.
Let's get shouts out.
um, there are some things that fit you, and there are some things that don't, and some things that fit me don't fit Carl Sean, and some of the things that fit Carl Sean don't fit me, and
Absolutely.
by all the combinations of all the people we have live today. So it's just very important, especially from my personal branding point of view, that you guys don't take any of this and be like, oh, this is what Tracy does, so this is what I have to do. No. We're going to practice. We're going to practice figuring out what you would do based on the conversations that we have today.
Absolutely.
So I'm just going to go ahead and start with Carl Sean's favorite place to start, which is, can anybody guess it? Vulnerability.
If you don't know right now, I'm having the ushers come right now and escort you out of our show tonight. Vulnerability. Wow. How did I know that was going to be something that I talked about, right? Some of the authentic things or some of the authentic actions that you can take. And what I tell people, what I teach people, or train people, I like to use all three of those together because each one is an additive to based upon who I'm talking to. So everything is not coaching, even though you may have that, you may consult, you may do that, but when you're dealing with individuals, you have to realize those are individuals. And the authentic actions, the first that I really take in essence of letting someone see their vulnerability or even delving into their vulnerability is to be really true to yourself. Let's get into the practice of just saying how things feel. Because I think a lot of times we have problems with that as just individuals. We don't want to step on toes. We want to kind of keep it, all the little cliches words that they use. You want to keep it tactful. I mean, there's a lot of ways that you can get in touch with your vulnerability that is not outside the realm of you staying in who that you are. I think a lot of people say when they have to show their vulnerability or they show their vulnerability side, if they're not thinking about it as a weakness, they have to get ignorant with someone in essence to show that. And there's ways that you do not have to even disclose that to individuals in the essence of that. Your actions can let a receiver know, because I think I've covered this in a couple of other shows, that we are all senders and receivers, and we're not all of those at all the same times, but we are those both things at different times. So when you are a receiver, it is up to you to be self-aware to understand that there's something here that I feel between them. Maybe it's someone saying they don't know anything. Because a lot of times we look for the opportunity to pounce on people when they're in the vulnerable state. And that's why it's so very uncomfortable for people to be like that. And it's only the engagement of how I engage with you that correlates and builds the relationships. And that's all vulnerability is. It's really building a relationship with someone that is able to do something for me that I cannot do, or someone that's building a relationship with someone that is enabled to do something that I may not be able to do. So when we realize that and we take it as such, we kind of put the stigma and the drama to bed in the essence of being vulnerable. So the actions that I do take, embrace your vulnerability. The first part about it and the first action that I would tell anybody, get comfortable being uncomfortable. Is there anything that you're comfortable with doing? Shake that up. because that is going to be the essence of where you can't hide. Vulnerability does not give you a hiding space, but what it does, it creates a space for you to be who you truly are. And this is what the actions that you want to take. You want to get uncomfortable with yourself. So I challenge you, and I challenge those that are watching. I always kick people off in anything that I'm doing. I say take a 30-day challenge because we know 30 days is pretty much a premise of when things will actually take effect. They'll become a habit. They'll become habit forming, and you can start to see some change in direction in that. So take 30 days. Pick one thing that you don't like to do, that's very uncomfortable for you to do, and do that particular thing every single day for 30 days. And this is an exercise that I mostly start clients on with that. And I say, regardless of whatever it is, you have to take the step. And if you think it's better for you to take an easy step into being an action taker, take that easy step. It could be something as you don't like to make videos. We'll keep it there. I don't like making videos. I didn't like making videos. I love talking to people. I love doing workshops with people. I love interaction. I love the stage. I'm not an actor, but I embrace that part of me. But when it came to COVID and talking to these screens, I wouldn't say it was a phobia, but it was a hard thing to do. So I made a challenge. I got into a couple of challenges, and he challenged me to make a video every single day for 30 days. And I did that. And through the process of making those videos, not trying to be perfect, sometimes stuttering, not really saying it like I thought it should say, but I got into a habit of understanding me and how I can relate to what I was doing. How did that build things in me that were not there before? How did that build my attention to talking to people on the screen? How did that build my attention to being able to articulate where people understood me? All of those things came into play. And do you know what happened when I found out those things at the end of the 30 days? I became empowered. And me doing a video no more, it was a thing of the past. And now I was able to go on and be expertise in the video. Now, instead of be conscious about how I look to you or Tracy or to anyone's watching, now my focus is on what content was I trying to deliver in the video. So when you're taking these actionable steps to building yourself to being authentic, it creates in you the you that is you. I know that sounded kind of crazy, but I like using that.
The you that is you, you guys. I think this is super important because we're talking about habit change here, right? We're actually talking about pretty much anything we're talking about in any of these episodes is related to a habit change. We have a habit of showing up in a specific way, and you either consider that authentic leadership right now or you don't. And if you're in this process of moving into authentic leadership, then that's habit change. That's a habit change. This is exactly why we're having this episode today, because the habit change requires you to take action. And so one of the things I'd love for you guys to tell us, our audience, you guys who are live with us right now, if there are any actions historically, specifically related to vulnerability, that have felt like a challenge for you. I know one of the things that immediately comes to mind for me, I want you guys to share. I'm going to share my example while you have time to type. Your examples are better. But the thing that originally comes up for me is that I'll use a specific example. I thought that a lot of the KPIs that we tracked at the last company I was at were bogus. And we spent a lot of time tracking them, but we also spent a lot of energy extrapolating the meaning of them. And most of them were not, were not useful, in my opinion. And so one of the things, I thought these thoughts all of the time. And the action that I took was to continually report on the KPIs and be annoyed because I thought they were dumb. I had an opportunity to show up and have a conversation with my boss about that. And it happened once. It happened once and it didn't go well. And so what did I do? I think what a lot of us do, whereas I didn't try again. But I still continued to think that it was bogus, and I was annoyed every time I had to do it. And I was annoyed that my people had to be measured against those KPIs because I thought they were dumb. Going and doing a thing one time, especially if you quote unquote fail at that thing the first time, never going to create a new habit. right? And so when we're looking at these authentic actions, it wasn't very authentic for me to just sit at my desk and be mad about the KPIs. It would have been more authentic to have what was probably going to be a difficult conversation with my CEO about why we have these, why are we measuring them, what's the point, what are they driving? And so I really want to encourage you guys to look at it. I really want you guys to share your examples as well, whether that came from like if you're an entrepreneur now, but you have a background in corporate. A lot of the things that we end up doing, like as entrepreneurs, we're still leaders. We're leading ourselves, we're leading our clients, might still be beating in the home, right? So we still have potentially bad habits that followed us from our corporate work environment, just because that's the only thing we know. And this is an episode about taking different actions.
Yes.
And how about this, you guys? Typing something in the comments is an action.
Ding, 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 ding.
Boom. And you know what? Even if you guys are sitting there and being like, you know what, I can't think of an example, but maybe the first thing I will do is go back and like start to look at that in my life. Do I have places where I want to show up with vulnerability, but I don't because blank, fill in the gap, right? Like I'm too afraid. I think people will judge me. It's not appropriate. Whatever those narratives are for you, the first step is to look for that. Why am I not showing up with vulnerability? Is it because it's scary? Can we talk about that for a second, Carl Sean? Because a lot of the reasons why we don't do these things, and I think specifically related to vulnerability, is that it feels scary. We talked about getting uncomfortable with being uncomfortable. And like, yes, it's uncomfortable, but it's also scary, right? Like
it's scary. I would say fear is pretty much derived by what you don't know. The unknown causes fear. The unknown produces fear. Things that you don't know about, you're afraid of. It's just our psyche, so to speak, if I could go medically term. But when you think about things that are pushing you toward there, because I've often wondered as a kid, like I wasn't afraid of a lot of things. And I was like bugs and people, and I guess growing up in the inner city with the noises and the violence and those kind of things. I don't know if it was that I kind of like built a shield up against fear, and it was a kind of a mechanism that I kind of like gave myself in order to survive. In that, so I wasn't fearful of things. I wasn't a jumpy kid. Like things didn't scare me. I was kind of stoic. And I remember my grandmother telling me as a young boy, she's like, "You ain't scared of nothing." She's like, "But you'll meet something someday that you'll be scared of." She didn't say someone or a person. She said something, because there is always something that drives fear in us, and the fear that is the unknown. And as I became an older man and a younger man, and starting to develop some ways and some characters about myself, there were things that I was picking up that I was fearful of. No, it wasn't the necessarily noise or those kind of things. That's distractions that we grow up with and we've learned to block out. They become those things that they become internal. I'm fearful of how I look to someone. I'm fearful of how things I do become judged. I'm fearful of the things that I'm not understanding become on the outward. I've ran into a lot of people that I'm talking to and counseling with now that they're fear that English is their second language. So they was fearful of even talking because how their dialect sounded, and they were trying to learn English. They're fearful of that. Not to and the thing about fear is that it robs us of, and I say this all the time, and I love saying this. Fear gives us a destination, which is your ending, right? Fear gives us a destination before we take one step on the journey. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine already having a destination and you haven't even traveled there? So is that truly a destination, or is that a place where you want to get? And this is where we confuse things, and it's, oh, my destiny is this, and I don't know how that's going to be, because I don't know. Of course you don't. That's why you take the journey. Even when you travel, when you go places, okay, you're going on a plane, you're going from here to wherever your destination is. Okay, you're going to go through walk through the motions of actually flying and travel. But the interesting thing is that it's still a journey that you must take. There are things that's going to happen along that flight. that you're going to be like, wow, I've never experienced this. Or wow, this is great. Or maybe, wow, this wasn't so great. Maybe it was a bad flight. It was a bumpy flight. It's like a lot of, but it's the experiences is which we shortchange ourselves on. And in those experiences are growth. In those experiences is learning things that we're learning about ourselves, what we can do. A lot of times, if you don't push yourself out of yourself, you'll never know yourself. Oh, man, I always come up with those, right? If you don't push yourself out of yourself, you won't know yourself. And it's just the simplicity of saying, if I don't try, how do I know if I can do it? And vulnerability, when they're used correctly, I often think about, I'll say this, Trace, and I'll pass it back to you. I often think about those prominent leaders that I read about, that I actually went to one of their namesake high schools in Chicago, Martin Luther King. And part of our curriculum was to learn everything about King. And you say, okay, well, there's the name of the school. I know the school is named after him and all that. But they indoctrinated that into our understanding of who the man was that we went to his high school that was named. And I didn't think too much of that at the time, but as I grew in life and started thinking about some of the premises I learned, some of the things that he taught others, if they paid attention, was around him, they became good for me in life. And they taught me how to be vulnerable. And when you think about him, Mandela, for instance, Gandhi, Mother Teresa, these are just some of the names that come off the top of my head. These were prominent people that used vulnerability to make connections, and how vital was the connections that they made, because they made a difference. So instead of avoiding the emotional exposure, because I mean, just think about King and Mandela had to spend time in jail for showing his vulnerability. I mean, his freedom was taken away. King was actually assassinated for some of the vulnerable things that he taught. And so there's a cost, but willing to pay the cost is always great. But giving that cost and the rewards of that is always beneficial to so many people besides yourself. And if you want to be that person, which I know everybody does, nobody wants to walk past nobody and not impact nobody. You go to work because you want to make a difference. Not always for the paycheck. I know some of you guys are working for the paycheck. Not always for the paycheck, but you go to work because you want to make a difference. You excel at your job because you want to make an impact. Those are the things that we work for. Those are the things that we are as humans that we work for. And those are the things that makes us vulnerable. So when you let those things loose in your life, you can actually live your life.
Okay, so just one thing. We don't believe that if you show up vulnerable, you're going to get assassinated.
Yeah. So, I know.
Yes.
Kind of like I went.
I just want you
dramatic
like
with that.
it's risky, but not that risky.
Yeah.
For most of us,
you take a risk, but maybe not those kind of risks. Okay.
Yeah. And I love also something that's really interesting for me is the fear. The fear isn't us being authentic, right? So I want you guys to think about moments where you were afraid and moments where you were showing up as authentic, and how you felt in those two different scenarios. Quite often, fear is related to you extrapolating someone else's response to you. Yeah, right? Lindsay, phew. But it's us extrapolating someone else, and we're showing up and we're just being ourselves. There's very little fear that's associated with that, except what we think other people might think of that, right? So that is like that. I love, Carl, Sean, your quote about pushing yourself outside of yourself to get to know yourself, because that's not even really, it's like a suit of armor almost. So like I'm inside, my unique, authentic personal brand is inside, and there's reasons why I think I can't show up. But in those moments where you are showing up, very little fear. And I wanted to mention that because Lindsay's comment, if you guys hadn't catched it, about being vulnerable, was that when she had to stand up and sing when she was 10, that was the first time she remembers being vulnerable, and that she was better for it. And I'm looking at my 3-year-old in front of me right now, who may or may not make an appearance at any given moment. But he doesn't have, like, he's not going to remember all the things that happens for him right now, right? But like when he's sad, he cries. When he's mad, he yells. When he's happy, he laughs like a gut laugh, right? That is that is him being himself, and he gets to show up. He doesn't have a concept of vulnerability right now because he doesn't, again, to tie back to Lindsay, is it the connotation and the connections that we've created with vulnerability.
Right.
I think it's totally that, because if
Absolutely.
we were all our 3-year-old selves, we have no connotation that is bad, that there's anything wrong with that, right? That's just the way we show up. That's us being authentic. And so it's just a really interesting concept, because when you think about all of us could go back and think like, oh, what was the first time I felt like really vulnerable? But we don't think about that, because when we were kids, we didn't consider that being vulnerable. We just considered it being. And we were safe because our parents are there to take care of us, and our family loves us, even if we're crying and throwing a fit that we won't brush our teeth for 20 minutes or half an hour. And like that, if I did that now, if I really didn't want to brush my teeth and I threw a fit for like 30 minutes, I would probably consider that being overly vulnerable, right? Like everything I believe is just coming out of me right now. He doesn't even relate it to that. So it's really interesting, because it's one of these things that it was funny. I was going back and I was reading an old post or something of mine, and I called it the hard candy coating on the outside of us, right? That keeps the soft chocolate safe on the inside. But like, the candy coating, it's okay, but the good stuff is the delicious chocolate inside. And if we let that hard candy coating stop the goodness from coming out, that's not even actually its job. So now what it was hired to do, which was quote unquote keep us safe, now it's not even doing that, because it's not safe. Like, we're not even revealing the concept of safe is gone, because nothing that we do in essence is safe. It's just the environment we create, the definitions we create. Those are what makes it safe or not safe. Any given action, I mean, again, don't run out in front of traffic on the highway. That's not safe. But the actions that we take to show up as an authentic leader, to reveal our personal brand, to be vulnerable, right? Like, the actions themselves don't by nature have a safe, not safe definition. We decide whether they're safe or not safe. And part of that, to be fair, is your environment, right? There's going to be things that feel more safe, less safe, based on where you are. There's sometimes you might show up more vulnerable. So I'm going to give you guys another personal example. So for me, when I think of the word vulnerable, to me, what that means is to show up how I'm actually feeling. So it doesn't mean to like show up sad if I'm not sad, right? Like, I'm not. But it is to show up as I'm not sure if I'm not sure. I'm going to pretend I don't know. Right? Like, can I figure it out? Yeah. Can we figure it out? Yeah. Pretty confident, but like, I don't know. And that is the concept of being able to say, I don't know. That is, for you, based on your experience, by default feels safe or unsafe. But the action of showing up and saying, I don't know, is neither safe nor unsafe. Now we're getting into like Schrodinger's cat stuff here, but it's just, I want you guys to think about that, because it's not really, we're talking about authentic actions today, and the actions, this is why it doesn't really matter what the action is, as long as there is action being taken. But the action that you are taking, an action I might take, might feel safe or unsafe to someone else, but that's your definition of safe and unsafe. It's not the action itself is safe or unsafe. I might have like, it was just that was a complicated one for you guys for a Tuesday evening, and for my Canadians who are just full of turkey still probably. So I would love to hear what you guys, like, how is that feeling? How does that feel for you when we say that it's not really the action itself that is safe or unsafe? It's your current definition of whether or not that action is safe or unsafe. I would love to hear how that feels for you guys, because these are the types of conversations where you get the space to see things differently than you have before. And again, you get to look at some of those things where, okay, I'm going to go to the office today, or I'm going to go work my own business today, and like, whoa, I didn't show up to do that X, again, fill in the blank, because it felt unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, that thing, if now I know that by default that thing is not unsafe, but there's something in my narrative that makes it unsafe, what is that? What is that? And just go a little bit deeper. And these are, I think, too, people forget that this is an action, right? Like just stopping and investigating something. You're like, wow, I didn't show up and post that today because I thought that it might be too far outside of my quote unquote personal brand for it to be relevant. Oh, well, the action of posting it isn't by nature aligned with my personal brand or not aligned with my personal brand. So why did I think that it's not aligned with my personal brand, right? This is one of the conversations I have lots with my community of people, is that we show up, we are trying to own our personal brands and be ourselves, but then there's like these segments of us that we don't want to reveal to other people because we think it's confusing, or we think it's not relevant, or we think we can't for whatever given reason. That's not something people share on LinkedIn, or that's not this, or that's not that. That's our story. We created that story. So once you find that power in like breaking apart your story, I will tell you guys something. The action of learning to like pick apart your story and figure out what is real, what is true, what like the action of running across a busy highway, not safe. The action of posting something online, not by nature safe or unsafe, right? So like, what is creating that feeling for us, and being able to take that action just to ask that question. Oh man, guys, talk about habit change. Try that one for 30 days to just like take a minute and explore, why did I not do this? Oh, this is like a very powerful skill to have as an authentic leader, because you know what that does? It helps you figure out what is you making a decision. I decided that because that was right for me, or I decided that because I thought that was right based on what some other person thought. Oh, and then as soon as you get into these things of like, oh my gosh, I was doing that because I thought that was what you had to do, and I really hate that, and I don't like it, and I don't want to do it. Boom, you just had a moment of authenticity that a lot of people don't have. And when you start to be like, you practice those skills in your personal life. So like, yeah, we're talking about being a leader. We're talking about showing up and leading other people. But when you can practice those types of skills in your personal life, you have those types of skills for your work life as well. And you don't have to practice them from scratch. Those skills are the same. Skill set is the same. I feel like all the comments are now quiet too. I might have made people's brains explode. I'm not sure.
It's what you're saying is so true, and it's such a necessity when you think about it. A lot of times, I get asked the question, especially when I'm doing group workshops or group training, and a lot of times that people ask me a question I often get a lot of times: what's a good starting point if someone wants to be more vulnerable? Like what's a good place to start for an individual? And then a lot of times I get, how can you kind of make that vulnerability contagious in my team or in my organization? Those are some of the things that I often get asked about, and I go back to the negative connotation, what people make of it. And it's so easy to, and I know I can't never get around. I never can get around this because I'm into changing the narrative of what vulnerability actually means. And if I could get signatures to solicit that, I would probably do that for Merriam-Webster to change that definition, because people have taken that. And you said something that was very key into dealing with vulnerability and how people are fearful of that. You take even Lizzie had said it with her singing, and she was made aware of a vulnerability for the simple fact that she felt open. But that had nothing to do with her ability to do what she was doing. What that was a mind state that said, oh, okay, I'm exposed, which is actually true. That's why I don't fight as hard to get that taken out of Merriam-Webster, because it is an exposure. And when you're vulnerable, you are exposed. And in the essence of exposure is just like anything. If you're exposed to the elements and you're not dressed properly, bad things can happen. But if you're exposed to the elements and you're in a favorable condition, good things can happen. So when you look at that, it has to be a balance of that. I think I said something to someone today in an uh, earlier show that I had, and they asked me, "Well, what's the balance between?" I think they said between the courage and no, they said strength and confidence.
Hmm.
And I say vulnerability. Vulnerability is the balance because when you're vulnerable enough in that you get the strength that you're seeking because it validates you. It just continues to validate who you are as a person. And you get the confidence in that because after the validation comes power. So you're empowered with who you are because I'm validated as who I am. Have you ever met anyone that's validated and sure about themselves and they not let you know? It's the same way that vulnerability actually acts for you. If you have someone that's timid or some, most of the times those are attributes or characteristics of someone that's not necessarily sure of who they are. And I won't necessarily go to the fact or to the extreme of say it's their talent, it's their skill, because a lot of people can work in the atmosphere or the administration of what they're in, but they're not confident about what they're in. And that makes a big difference as far as production, innovation, creativity. You need those things so you can understand about the authentic part of that. And when I answer those questions and people say, yeah, I say, yeah, I understand that it's a negative connotation when people speak that. But it goes back to how we understood what that meant. And
Uh-huh.
this is where I jump onto the dictionary version of that because before we had definition of what those feelings were when you were a 10-year old feeling exposed, or as Tracy has said about her son, that just speaks things as they are. If I'm happy, he smiles. If he's sad, he shows a sad face. If he's angry, he lets you know. These are the things that we've come away with as adults, and now in a society where we're on pins and needles, we can't let anyone know how we really feel. And farther than that, I don't think we know how to let people know how we
Hmm.
feel. I think
Yeah.
we've really lost that communicative part of that, where it says that when you are a kid, you're taught, you teach parents and kids teach. I mean, parents teach the kids, don't let anyone touch you there, or it's wrong to touch you there. And these touching and these things that we get understanding of, we've lost them as adults
Hmm.
because now we don't know how to communicate. I don't like that without it being 10 octaves or without
Right.
it being disrespectful. And that's a lost art of communication. And in that communication, you learn that through being vulnerable because you learn and you're self aware with situations and things of that. Don't want to give you guys a medical class, but it's definitely a lot of that plays into the psyche of how we develop as people, how
Hmm.
we interact, how we carry on conversations and relationships, and how we really let people know who we are as opposed to who you want them to see.
Hmm.
And that those are some of the things that are really true about taking authentic actions because just doing it really creates the actions. I mean, just doing the actions really creates the authenticity. Once
Hmm.
you continue to do that and you set a habit of doing that, and I think you had said it earlier, I put it up, where you were talking about the habits and changing, and the habits create change. I think it was what
Hmm.
you said. And that, yeah, habit changes requires action. And that's the same thing with vulnerability. It requires actions. You have to send out the signals. And then you see what you get back. All the time it's not good. All the time it's not bad. But then you learn to navigate it. Okay.
Hmm.
This and I feel that the little way with that, so I won't do as much. Or that one's is like open arms vulnerable. Okay, I'll do more.
Hmm.
And then you learn to navigate it and then it becomes strategic and intentional.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I want to say is that, like, okay, so my son is 3. When he's angry, this is not the response that I would recommend that most like adults take when they're angry, right? Don't just throw a tantrum and sprawl out on the floor and not be able to walk.
I've seen tantrums. They haven't got on the floor, but I've seen adults that cannot handle it and they have went ballistic.
Well,
Uh,
and it's just an interesting. It's a there's so much here to unpack, and like quite honestly, this is like I despise that phrase, but there is like literally so much here. So
Mm-hmm.
between, and I'm hoping it's a little bit different from my son because he has a personal branding coach as a mother, but when we're growing up, we're taught more to like hide our anger, process our anger, than to show our anger. We've done the same thing with sadness, right? So sadness is allowed in your personal life. This is like not allowed in the work environment, right? But let's be honest, people get sad at work. Sometimes it's work related, sometimes it's life related, and you're just sad while you're at work. And we haven't had the practice of learning how to show these emotions. And the reason why I share this is because it comes back to actions, right? Whatever, I'm going to use a basketball example again, right? Like if I want to get good at shooting free throws, I have to shoot free throws. I was actually listening to, like I'm constantly listening on repeat to The One Thing on audiobook. And chapter 16 is about how you have to do something 10,000 times to master it, to become a master, right? Have we shown vulnerability 10,000 times? I'll be fair, like, of all you guys who are listening, and if you guys are listening on the replay too, I would love to hear your answer to that question about like, what are the things that when you think of being vulnerable feel hard for you? Because we had one person on our live who shared that, right? Maybe it's because part of that sharing, it feels vulnerable for other people. And this is fine, right? Like where you're at is exactly where you're supposed to be. It's just that if you want to be somewhere different, you have to take different actions. And so if I want to show up and I want to be able to create environments where people can feel sad or can be angry, and that's acceptable, right? Like that's a valid emotion for people. There are specific ways in a work environment that are acceptable to do that. Like blowing up and throwing your computer, not one I recommend, right? Like
I don't recommend that.
I had a friend who like would always lose it on the golf course when he made a bad shot, and like multiple times he just like broke golf clubs. And I was like,
that's expensive.
For real? I know, right? That's what I thought. I'm like, dude, I don't have enough money to just keep replacing golf clubs when I'm in university. But anyway, like maybe that's not the best way, but also if that's the only way you've ever practiced, that's the only way you know. And so all of this conversation we've touched on, I know we seem to have focused a lot on vulnerability, but there's been undertones of all the other pillars because all these pillars are so intertwined with each other, right? Like having a conversation, right? Being able to show up and create a space for yourself where you feel psychological safety. Being able to live your values, bring your values to the table and make a comment based on what you value and how you see it. Showing up with your personal brand, making that post because you feel like you want to, and it's something that is important for you to say. Like, all of these things come with practice, and the practice, you get good at those things by practicing specific actions. And so what I really want to challenge you guys to do today is pick one of the pillars. So we talked a lot about vulnerability, so you can choose vulnerability if you'd like, or pick your personal brand, or pick living your values, right? How could you show up and live your values tomorrow in a way you haven't before, in your actions? Maybe that means taking a lunch break to have lunch with your kids. Maybe it means taking a break from your kids to get in some personal time for reading or a workout or something like that. Maybe it means not doing that unnecessary piece of work and instead scheduling a call with your manager, or maybe your manager is you if you're an entrepreneur, to talk about whether that's really a necessary thing to do, right? Like, how does it contribute? And so I want you guys to start the very first practice that we can have is just investigating where we are showing up inauthentically and asking ourselves, why are we showing up? Why am I doing that? That doesn't feel right for me. That my favorite thing to say is like, oh, that feels so Tracy, right? And that's the only way I can describe it, because that's me describing me being me, and so I'm now a verb. But that's just like, I'm just Tracying today, doing Tracy, right? Like, I'm the only one who can define that, because I'm the only one who really knows what being Tracy, doing Tracy, showing up as Tracy looks like, right? And you guys each have that. So what does it look like to show up as Lindsay? What does it look like to show up as Zadina? What does it look like to show up as Anna, as Melanie? Like, what does it look like to show up as you? And why? Why are you choosing other things in specific scenarios? Why? It could be because, work environment dictates this, or because, that's what they did at my last company, so that's what I do at my company. Or it could even be like, you know what, my mom always did that and I loved that. These are all stuff. We always look at this as if we're supposed to learn something bad, right? Like, I'm not showing up as vulnerable because, like, my mom never did, and I thought that was wrong, right? Like, that's a terrible example, because my mom shows up as vulnerable all the time. But just like, we always think that it has to be like, the action that we're taking has to be different than what we're doing, or like the opposite. But it really doesn't. We might look at some of those things and be like, I'm not showing up authentically because, like, my definition was like, that thing, that action would be authentic. Like, if I did that thing, I would be an authentic person. But as our earlier conversation outlined, that thing by nature is not one or the other, authentic or inauthentic. It's authentic for you if it feels like a good representation of you, and it's inauthentic for you if it doesn't. It's not like, this happens a lot so my background is marketing, for those of you who didn't know that. And this happens tons in marketing, because people think they just need a creative slogan or a fancy design or like whatever. And like, that's the thing. Like, authentic brands have a cool logo. I'll be honest, if you guys pay attention, you probably would notice that our logo for the show was created in Canva. Does that have anything to do with the authenticity of us showing up on the show? In my opinion, no. In someone else's opinion, maybe, right? And this is the whole point, is that the actions that we take are tied to what we feel is authentic. And so, coming out of this episode, what we really want you guys to do is to take some actions. And here's the other thing about actions. One more thing to say about actions. Maybe one, maybe more. Definitely one. If you're going to do it and you want to be held accountable for doing it, you've got two people right here. I don't know what side Carl Sean is on. Me and Carl Sean. Yes. We care about you being authentic. And so Absolutely. If you need an accountability partner from this week's episode based on what type of actions you are going to take to be more vulnerable, please message us. Please comment on here and tag us in terms of what actions you're going to take. And we will follow up with you. And we'll ask you, how did that go? Well, I will ask you how it feels, because this is what I ask people, right? Like, how did it feel? Did it feel scary? Did it feel less scary the second time you tried it? This is our jam, right? And Carl Sean, especially if you pick a vulnerability one, pick Carl Sean, because he's all about that.
Absolutely.
But we really this is the point of the show, you guys, is for you to take action, to do something different, so you feel like you show up as an authentic leader. And they're like, yes, let's do a 30-day challenge. Although I feel like every episode we give people a 30-day challenge, and if you guys watch all the episodes, you'll have like 6 challenges on the go.
I'm carrying you all. I'm carrying you throughout the rest of 2021. I think this is the second one. I think so. That leaves you. October, November? No, October. You get a late start. November. Well, no, actually, I gave you one last week. So
last week. Yep.
So you should be on that one. This one is November. Maybe I should put November in there so people won't get confused. Right. This would be November. But the premise of it really is just to take action, in which we're really trying to do. And I just labeled it Vulnerability Challenge because what it does is unveil something in you that makes sort of like what I said earlier. You want to get comfortable being uncomfortable. So you're exposing the vulnerable part of you wants to be comfortable in not doing any actions. Yes, they work around each other. It's amazing how things that affect us, that encourage us, that help us, that develop us, also hide us, hinder us, and keep us from doing things. Those same very things. So if you can do these challenges and challenge yourself up to doing these things on a consistent basis, you'll see the difference. I mean, it's not. I'm
Hmm.
not a used car salesman. I'm not selling you snake oil, and Tracy isn't either. So what I'm telling you is the action is what's going to create the difference for you. So
Absolutely. And you know what? I had a like really cool thought on the challenge based around this because being vulnerable, again, we all have different ways of being vulnerable, right? So
mhm.
you're gonna practice the ways that work for you. What if our challenge coming out of this episode is for you guys to just look at? I would love for you guys to look at your definitions of things. I would love for you to look at your definition of vulnerability, of personal
Mm.
brand, of authenticity, and ask yourself the question, where did that definition come from? Did it come from society at large? Did it come from an experience that you had? Did it come from the dictionary? Where did this come from? Did it come because you created it? And this, I know Lindsay had to hop off, but one of the things that she does in her Voracious Values workshop, I told you to come back, is creating a definition for each of your values. So if you're going to say that your value is authenticity, what does that mean to you? What does that mean to you? And can we start to practice what our definitions are and create our own definitions instead of constantly making our decisions based on someone else's definition? Because I feel like this, again, one of those things that I feel is can really easily be extrapolated into other parts of your life. Oh, what's the
Mhm.
definition of a loving relationship? What's my definition of a good mother, right? Like all of these things are built partially because of what you think, but a lot of external input. And when you can separate the external input from what you are, what you believe, that is the thing that leads you to authentic action. And then once we get to actually practicing the actions, right? Practicing being vulnerable, practice living your values, practice having a conversation, right? Like we know we have the skill of being able to separate us from everybody else. And that is like the key secret to being an authentic anything, authentic leader,
Yes.
taking authentic actions, authentic mom, authentic person, right? Like is being able to figure out who you are. What is you and what is not? What is something that was imprinted on you by someone else that isn't really you? And we can let it go. And in order to let it go, you guys, all of these things are practice. Letting things go is a practice. You can't get good at letting things go if you don't know what you need to let go. So how do you feel about that, Carl? Our next 30-day challenge being know your definitions.
Definitions. Yes. Well, you know how I feel about definitions. I think I expressed that very articulately every time we have a show. Definitions to me are keen because I how do I want to phrase this? I use definitions to make applications about what a word means, and to give you that of how my mind works, because my cogs they go counterclockwise. I look at the definition of words as the understanding of, and I apply them to my experiences. And that's how I really understand if that word means that in my life. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't go around talking to everybody changing what Merriam-Webster says because that's our English language, right? That's our dialect. So I definitely wouldn't want to do that unless they'll probably have me in a white jacket instead of this orange shirt kind of wrapped up. So that's not the cause of that. But what I do, what that enables me to do is say, okay, this doesn't fit my mode. This doesn't fit who I am. So, though I am cognizant of what this definition means to every individual who reads the material that I read, I know in my own self that that definition does define who I am, what I am, or what part of it is that. And I live in that. And no, it's not two of me, and I don't branch out and clone myself. But what I do in my psyche, I tell myself that this doesn't apply to me. So, therefore, that's not you. So therefore, when we look at that, when we go into these jobs and we go into these offices and we see this leadership which have been placed in front of us that doesn't jive with us is what a leader should be, I'm able to separate that. So therefore, I put myself in where I'm already at and where I stay, and that's in my development of being in leadership and understanding what true leadership is. So when I see it some other way besides what I know it to be, I don't have a problem identifying that's not who I want to be. And in that, you look at that in the leaders, and of course, everyone's just a leader. Doesn't have to be this audacious leader that, just stirs up the pot and just not doing things 100% right. There are things that a leader does, whether they be so Captain Obvious, so to speak, in their leadership, or whether it be subliminal in their leadership. And when you are authentic to yourself, you'll be able to identify those things. Your self awareness will bring those things to you because you're being authentic and you have an understanding of saying, okay, that's not what leadership looks like. And it'll be pointed out. And when you start walking in this, and I say walking in it because it is a practice, as Tracy said, it's definitely a practice of it. It's not nothing you get overnight. You won't be a guru tomorrow when you go to work and you'll be able to identify all this. You'll be like, no, that's not going to happen. But what you can do is you can start being aware of tendencies because people have them. We are creatures of nature. We're creatures of habit. We have tendencies that what gets us in a lot of trouble a lot of times individually because we do things in tendencies and people are able to find those things out. And then that creates havoc for you. But when you look at that on the opposite, on a perspective of, okay, let me really see how management does. Let me really see if there's authentic actions being taken. Let me see if they're just mimicking what someone said this should be. All of those things are jive with you. So I think in the essence of doing that challenge and putting yourself up to the challenge will only benefit you in the essence of that. And whether you call it a vulnerability challenge or whether you just call it awareness challenge or whatever title that you give it to, challenge yourself to think about things the way that you want them to be. And that's you. So I can't come on and say, oh man, Tracy Lee's great. I want to be like Tracy. No, but what I can say that Tracy Lee's great. And there's some authentic actions that Tracy takes that I can mimic in my own life. And that's finding out who I am. And I always say that when you walk in a building or when you walk in a job or corporation, 9 times out of 10, I don't know now, I haven't been in the buildings like those in quite a few months now with COVID. But 9 times out of 10, when you walk into these big corporations, somewhere along the line, whether it's out there at the receptionist desk, whether it's along the hallways, somewhere the vision is on the wall, somewhere the mission is on the wall. See if they're aligning themselves with those things that are on the walls when you go back to your place of work. See if even if it's in a handbook and they don't have it on the wall, I'm pretty sure you have access to a handbook of what those things are. See if those that are around you are in synonymous with those things that became the vision, became the mission, became the reason of why things were started or the way that work was. And if they're not aligning themselves in that, there's trouble on the horizon.
Come talk to Tracy because that is who brand leadership campfires are
Yes, that is
specifically for.
brand leadership. Right. So we've made the connection. I've told you what to look for on the vulnerable part. She's told you what to look for on the branding part. And the best thing about it is the exercise, you don't need anything. Like this is amazing. Like this is a way you don't have to go buy a book. You don't have to go. Well, I do have a course that's going to be coming up, so I do want you to get into that. So I do want that, but you don't have to buy the course. You don't have to buy those things. But what you do need is someone to show you how to practice that. And with that, and with teaching that, and how me and Tracy is working together with this leadership, and understand that we're giving you the tools to create that in yourself. So we're not making you that because you're already that. But what we're doing is exposing that and letting you see that. Remember what I said earlier? So you can see the you. So push yourself out of yourself so you can know yourself.
Mm-hmm. And one of the other things I will remind you that is helpful, and it doesn't have to be me or Carl Sean. Carl Sean and I volunteer to be your accountability partner in this challenge. Right. It doesn't have to be us. Having an accountability partner, though, will make those habits stick faster. Because as soon as you, sharing, telling people that you're doing that, Two, and then two, having an accountability partner who will specifically hold you accountable. Because very minimally telling people that you're doing it. So even you guys committing to me and Carlson, like, yes, I'm going to do this. I'm going to look at my definitions and figure out how much of that is me and how much of that is not me. Like, tell us, state it, make it a plan, look at how you're going to take action to do that, right? Are you going to journal at the end of every day to see what you learned, right? Like, everybody has different ways, different actions that you're going to take. And the important thing is to do something. So we would love to be your accountability partners. So tell us what you're going to do. We're really excited to hear from you guys. You can feel free to, you also, if you are one of those people who are listening and you're still working up the courage to put a post in the actual comments, please also feel free to contact myself or Carl Sean directly. We are here to help you guys with this. So like, reach out to us. We are here to help you in the way that you're ready for right now. So you just let us know. And one of the other things I always want to throw in is that if you're looking for a place to practice these skills, you're looking for a group of people who are like ready to be your accountability partner, peeps, your business peeps, please ask me about it. We'd be happy to have you. We have an open house coming up next week on actually this time, maybe an hour earlier on Tuesday. Approximately this time next Tuesday. So if that's something you're interested in, it's an open house. You guys get to try it out for free. Let me know. We want to see you there. It's a really great place. It's that safe place to start the journey into your authentic leadership when you're at the point where you're not quite sure what that means.
Absolutely. So you make sure that you're doing it, that you're taking action, that you're doing the things necessary for you to make changes and transformations in your life. It's a wonderful feeling to make changes and be empowered in those changes. And they all begin with you. So in the essence of that, you take the actions like I put up there. Accountability partners are essential, and they really are, because whether it be Tracy or myself, or whoever that you deem that to be for yourself, the accountability is what drives the growth and the progress. So in the essence, if I'm putting it out there and I'm letting someone see, or letting someone hear, or letting someone know, these are the things that I want to do to make myself better. And the accountability partner holds you to the fire with that. And what greater way do you have that? Nobody goes and work out by themselves. Well, some people may go to the gym and do different things, but I just say weightlifter. A weightlifter need a spotter. So, you don't want to get that big weight up there and just go across your chest or across your neck, even. Ugh, joking, thinking of that. Go across your neck and drops on you. You need a spotter, and the spotter is the accountability partner. They're going to make sure that you are okay with what you're doing, and they're also going to guide you. They're going to guide you as well. So the things that you think you may not know, you may not understand, or you may not feel, we're here for that. And this is the reason why we do this show, because it's authentic leadership 101, and we do it as a class. Your in school class is in session. Well, not now. We're done with session.
And Carl, Sean, and I are invested in you guys getting an A+. There's no bell curve. No one's going to be average. We are all coming out of this as authentic leaders. A+, as you're authentic. You know what we should do? We should break like a little plus on top of the U for authentic. This is what it's about, you guys. And everybody can have it. Everybody's looks a little bit different, and everybody can have it. It's not like one of you who came today gets to have an authentic brand. Everybody can. If you're going to take the action, I'm going to change that from if to when. When you take the action. When you're ready to take that action, when you're ready to take authentic actions, then you are ready to be an authentic leader. And we are here to help you when you're ready.
And we want to help you do that. Hey, Gabe, thank you for tuning in, my friend. It was shout out to my man, Gabe. I saw his post, and I always like to give people their flowers, especially when they make impact, especially on me, because I'm just a humble guy who just love making impact. But he made an impact on me. Dave came through and he did a post a few days ago. I'm not sure exactly how many days ago it was, but he just had visited, I think it was about 20 or so lives, and he took snapshots of all those lives. And one of the lives was our show and another show that I do. And I just amazing fellow, amazing guy. I loved him. I love him. Want to get on this show and talk with him and chat it up. But Gabe, I just had to give you a shout out, brother. I appreciate you coming by the show, showing us some love as always. And as not only Gabe, we appreciate all of you guys as well. Lindsay, Zadina, we've got to hop on a call, Zoom. We got to get in chat so we can get to know each other better, find out about our passions. Lindsay, me and you have been on numerous Zooms. We almost got Zoom appointments on retainer. So we talk so much on Zooms, but it is just amazing. And I'm just loving how this is going. We want to get more interaction with you guys. We want to send out the invites. We know that the invites are coming and people are coming because what we have is sustainable and it's going to sustain you. And the authentic leadership is just the term leadership, but there's a leader in all of us. And if we can be authentic about who we are, we'll see where that leadership takes us. And if it's in the home, if it's in a job, if it's in your school, if it's in your career, if it's in just life in general, when you're authentic, you're living your best life. So we thank you all for coming out. Some of you, Trace, got anything coming out? Anything new? Anything? I know you got the peeps. You got the peeps. You got the peeps.
Come to the open house next week. And I'm going to have a very special announcement for you guys next week with a very fun definition attached to it. So stay tuned for that on our next episode.
Stay tuned. Oh, and I almost forgot the vulnerability toolkit. It's under construction on my website as we speak. So I soon will have that for you guys. I got the URL. I'm getting it built. I am excited about that. The vulnerability toolkit. We got 4 modules in there that we're going to be working through: the introduction, breaking bad habits, moving forward, and the breakthrough. Man, I'm excited about that. So we're going to give you some more about that on the next show and let you know how far along we are with the URL. We're looking to drop that November 1st. So I'm excited because it's like the middle of October now. And I'm just excited for it. We're going to do some Black Friday discounts. And you guys can have
2 weeks of practice of finding your own definitions before you do Kyle Sean's vulnerability program. And then, how much easier will that be for you guys to break your habits?
Breaking bad habits. Definitely. That's definitely. After you reintroduce yourself, you're going to break some bad habits. I know everybody has them, especially when it comes to vulnerability. They're in there and you just don't know. But we thank everybody for coming out again. Tracy, lovely as always. Continue to enjoy some of the leftover turkey and pies and sweet potatoes and all of those good things that Thanksgiving brings on the Canadian side. We thank everybody that came out tonight. Remember, guys, only you thought I was going to say could prevent forest fires, right? I'll say only you can be authentic. So just be your authentic self and you'll automatically be the authentic leader. Until next week, same time, same bat channel.
No, not same bat time. Back to the regular bat time on Monday.
Back to the regular bat time. We're moving the bat cave back to Monday, okay? So we're going to be Monday on the 18th. I think that is, right? The 18th, if I'm not correct. The 18th at 6 p.m. We'll be back on our Monday schedule. So we look to see you guys then. Don't come back to this bat channel on Tuesday because you'll miss it and then I'll be angry because I said it.
You'll be angry because you'll have missed the stuff. So, or you can just watch the replay.
I know. I'll watch my own replay, right? So you guys have a great night. Great night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for coming by, guys.